We made squash casserole, and we'll show you how to make it too. Welcome to Crocs in the Kitchen.
I'm Jessica.
And I am Brian. So yeah, we made a squash casserole, and it's kind of an interesting thing because this is sort of a classic dish for my memories, because my mom used to make this all the time, at least in my mind. It was probably only for special occasions, but we used to eat this stuff like crazy whenever she would make it. And the recipe was very, very simple and very, very standard American diet. And so, yes, it has squash in it, but it is definitely not healthy at all.
It was not healthy. I actually discovered it just a few years ago. So I think your mom made it for one of the gathering, like, you know,
it was like Thanksgiving or Christmas or something, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so delicious. Now, stuffing has always been my favorite holiday dish. And so, like, dressing, you know, whatever. So anything that has that involved, I'm all in. So when I found out that she made this squash casserole that was covered with delicious stuffing, I was all about it.
Yes, but because we couldn't actually have that kind of a dish, Jessica was like, we need to figure out how to convert this into a whole food plant-based version of that. And this required a lot of steps to figure out how to do it. It was just one thing after another that we had to problem solve along the way. We have made this dish many times now.
We messed it up a couple of times. We tried a few different things. We've been working on it, so we've eaten a lot of squash casserole.
That we have.
But I will say this actually is like a collaboration. Like, a lot of our recipes that we do are mainly you.
Yes.
And I did my fair amount of research and input into how this should all come together, I thought.
Yes, so this is a dish where we had to pretty much swap out everything but the squash and figure out how to actually put it together and make an absolutely delicious squash casserole that at least reminds me of what my mom makes, and I think we did just that. So let's get to cooking. So the original recipe that my mom followed involved using a can of cream of chicken soup and sour cream, both of which are not whole food plant-based. So we had to come up with a completely new alternative for that sauce. We actually recommend that you make it the night before, so that way it thickens up a bit and the flavors have a chance to meld. But for this recipe, you will need
1 cup of water, 3 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon, and we don't recommend that you swap this with regular veggie broth because you really need a concentrated version. So check the link in the description below for more information on where you can purchase this. 1/4 cup of red lentils, 1/4 cup of cashews, 1 12-ounce package of silken soft tofu, and then you'll need some of our super secret seasoning blend that Brian came up with.
And for the seasoning blend, you will need 1 tablespoon of poultry seasoning, 2 teaspoons of thyme, 2 teaspoons of sage. We are using rubbed sage. Not sure if that really matters, but that's what we have. 1 teaspoon of rosemary, which is my favorite herb. 1 teaspoon of marjoram, 1/4 teaspoon of finely ground pepper, and a dash of nutmeg. We ended up grinding up our seasoning blend in our spice grinder, but this is entirely optional. But if you are going to grind it up, make sure that you don't just completely turn it into a super fine powder. You want to leave some of those pieces intact.
You will need to divide up the seasoning into 3 equal parts. It makes about 6 teaspoons worth, so each of these will be about 2 teaspoons, and you'll use them in various parts of the dish. So to make your sauce, you'll need to boil 1 cup of water, and then you're gonna add your Better Than Bouillon, which I've already weighed out 3 teaspoons worth into this spoon, so I'm just going to stir that in. Actually, Brian is, because that's not my hand, but you know, you get it. Then you're gonna add your lentils, which of course have been rinsed. And finally, you'll add the cashews. So this process is just going to soften up those cashews and those lentils. You're basically gonna bring it to a boil, then you're gonna cover it, reduce the heat, and let it simmer for about 10 minutes until everything is softened. After you soften everything, you're going to start adding it into your blender. Now, do be careful here, safety warning. There are some blenders where you can't actually add hot liquids to them because they don't have any way of venting it. This is a Vitamix, which does have that, so just be careful. You'll add the entire package of silken soft tofu and then one of your portions of the seasoning blend as well. After that, just turn your blender up to high for about 30 seconds to a minute, just until everything is incorporated. After it's blended, immediately pour it into a jar. We have a 2-cup jar here, which is the amount that we will need for the recipe. You might end up with a little bit extra, but you can just store that in another container and use it for a number of other things. Also, remember to make this the day before and then let it sit overnight just so it thickens before you add it to the casserole.
And now on to the rest of the recipe. You will need 2.5 pounds of squash. We like to use a combination of yellow squash and zucchini, 1 large yellow onion, 2 cups of shredded carrots, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, and 4 slices of sprouted grain bread like Ezekiel bread. And you will need the remaining 2 portions of the seasoning blend that we made earlier.
To prep the squash, we like to use our mandolin slicer, and make sure you wear the gloves. Safety first, people. This thing is really sharp. I didn't let Brian get one of these for years because I was afraid he would take a finger off, and I'm still afraid of it. But anyway, side note, our mandolin has a dial on it to control how big the slices are. We set it to just between 6 and 9 millimeters, and that seems to work out really great for this recipe.
Really what you're trying to do is make sure that everything is the same size. If you can do that just with a knife, go ahead and do that. But also, we think that this size is great because it holds everything together and the squash doesn't become super soggy and fall apart.
For the onion, we're going to use our dicer to dice it into about 1/2-inch squares. You could also just dice it regular, but this thing makes it so much easier. And there will be also a link to this below in the description. Brian, are you wearing pajama pants?
Hey, I cook in comfort. You will need a large pot, or like what we have, a 12-quart stock pot to cook everything in. Just fill it up halfway with water and bring it to a boil, and then add in all of the veggies that we just prepped and give it a good stir with, of course, our giant spatula. It's my favorite spatula. Give everything a good stir so it's nice and in the water. And for the final ingredient that we are adding in, a tablespoon of minced garlic. Cover it up and bring it back to a boil and boil it for 10 minutes. You want everything to be really nice and soft, but not completely falling apart and just straight mush. You want this to maintain some of its texture. If you're wondering, the little pot next to the stock pot is actually what we were making for dinner, and the rest of the week it was some of our tomato chickpea sauce to go on some spaghetti squash. Once it's done boiling, you can very carefully strain out all of the liquid. Once again, be very, very careful. This is super hot water, but you want this to go into the largest colander that you have and just let it sit. Let it drain off as much liquid as possible. You can possibly toss it a couple of times in here. Be very gentle. You don't want to like break everything apart, but just let that water drain off. You want to remove as much liquid as possible.
We usually let this sit in the sink in the colander for at least 10 minutes, but you can let it sit longer and even more of the water will come out.
Once everything was drained off, we transferred the squash, carrots, and onion into our salad chopper bowl, actually, because it's just a large bowl that we can use.
Yeah, this is the one that comes with that weird looking pizza cutter chopper thing we have for our salads that we've used in a few videos. And it makes a really nice sturdy bowl.
And as you can see, the can of soup replacement that we made the night before has thickened up very nicely and is ready to be poured out onto these veggies. Trust me, you want to make this the night before. It will be better.
Now this is where I realized we actually messed up the recipe. So you're technically supposed to add the seasoning blend to the vegetables and toss it before you add the sauce in, but I'm not really sure if the order matters, but in this case, we just dumped the seasoning on the top and then mixed it all together.
After that, just gently combine everything together. Yes, I made a mess on the side and Jessica had to clean it up, but just gently stir everything together to where everything is nice and coated and the seasoning blend has been mixed in thoroughly.
And now for the fun part, building the casserole. This is my favorite part. So you just put everything into a 13x9 pan. I like to use this Pyrex glass one because nothing sticks to it and it works really great. Then you just want to level it out and make it look all nice and pretty and even and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you're like me and you're a weirdo and you're taking photos of this and trying to put them on the internet and make it look pretty, you can also reserve some of the zucchini and yellow squash before you add it to the bowl and mix it all together, and then just add those on the top and it will just make it look even prettier. And then I also sprinkled a few little extra carrots and stuff on just to make it look nice, but this is totally optional. So like we said, we use Ezekiel bread for our little stuffing mixture that goes on top, and this is a sprouted grain bread and it's very delicious. So you want to toast the bread first so it gets a little bit crispy, and then you're just going to chop it up into cubes. Brian actually made the cubes a little bit too big for my taste, but I took over and did the remaining 3 slices. So once you have the bread cubes done, you're going to make a little bit of a veggie stock sauce to coat them with. So you're just going to want 2 tablespoons of boiling or hot water. You'll add 1/4 teaspoon of Better Than Bouillon, and then the remaining 2 teaspoons worth of seasoning blend from earlier. So you'll whisk all that up with a baby whisk in a little bowl, and then you'll have your sauce ready to coat the bread.
After that, it's just a simple step of mixing everything together with your bread and your liquid. So just pour it on and stir to coat.
I think that this part really makes the casserole, like it makes it super, super tasty. So then you're just gonna add those right on top and arrange them, make them look all pretty, and then you will pop this into the oven that has been preheated to 350 degrees. And you just wanna heat it up for about 20 minutes. You're just trying to like heat it all through and crisp up that bread a little bit more. And then you'll have the final casserole.
Look at that. Doesn't that just look pretty? That's like cookbook level good right there. Instagram worthy.
So there you have it.
Hey, that's my line.
Just a few simple steps, nothing complicated at all. And you have yourself a nice casserole.
Yeah, it's not really, it's not a complicated dish. It's just got steps to it that you gotta follow. It's not super, super difficult.
None of it's difficult to do, like technique-wise. It's just a lot of steps. So I would recommend doing it in stages. As we said, definitely make the like cream soup sauce, whatever it is, the day before so it can thicken overnight. And then you can even put together the casserole, like mix it all together with the veggies and just refrigerate it, and then put the like stuffing, topping, whatever on top, and then bake it the next day whenever you're ready to bake it. So you can break it up and then it's not like a whole like long process. But this is one of those dishes that you make for special occasions. So it's not something that you're gonna make every day, but I think it really turns out well. And I don't know, we'll have to share it with some of our family and see what they actually think of it.
I would love to see what my mom actually thinks about this, to see sort of our version of her dish.
Yeah.
So maybe for the next holiday, because we're not doing it for Christmas, I know that much. But maybe for the next holiday after that, we can make it and take it over there for the family.
Yes.
That'll be fun either way. But I think we should get to tasting it.
Yeah, let's taste it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's taste it.
You want your fork? Here's your fork.
Yes, thank you.
Here, I'll take this fork. It's right there.
Oh, thanks. Let's see here.
If you're wondering, Jessica told me to grab the plate so I could hold it between us. So that's what I'm doing.
I did not. No, I really did.
So it's got that Really nice creamy flavor underneath it. The squash is very nicely cooked. It is soft. It is tender. It isn't like super chewy or anything.
It's like the perfect, it's cooked the perfect amount where it's still got some structure to it,
Yeah.
but it's not like super crunchy.
Yeah, and the stuffing on top is just awesome. But the flavors are so good.
Yeah, that blend of seasonings that you put together.
It's that stuffing mix.
Yeah, like it just smells like the holidays to me.
You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't think this has butter in it too.
That's true.
Because it tastes so good.
But I think you'd also be hard pressed for someone to be like, eat this and be like, oh, it has tofu in it. Like, you would never know.
Yeah, no, totally hidden in there. But man, that is just so good. What? Oh, you want to eat more?
Just one more bite.
Just one more bite?
And the cashews. But here's the thing about that. My brain goes into mode of like, oh my God, no, people aren't going to realize there's cashews in it, and then they're going to be allergic to nuts, and then they're going to eat it, and then they're going to have an allergic reaction, and then they're going to like sue me or something.
It does have cashews in it, people.
So don't serve it to people with nut allergies.
Yes. Honestly speaking, the soup recipe that we sort of developed there, that cream of chicken-esque soup, it is just like one of my all-time favorite things right now.
Yeah.
I literally will like dip carrots into the leftovers. The jar that we used to pour out into there, I totally licked that sucker clean. After we mixed everything together in the bowl, I totally scraped down the bowl and licked that too. It is just so delicious, and I just want to like eat that as soup anyway.
It's nice too because it's like it's not all nut-based creaminess, so like it's the calories aren't really that bad when you think, because that tofu is super low.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised that whole box of tofu is what, like
180 something?
Yeah, which is not bad. But yeah, it's definitely, it has that rich taste, but it doesn't have too many, you know, it's not like we're using 2 cups of cashews or something crazy in there to make cream out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It is just an absolutely fantastic little sauce, and I've already got like 4 or 5 ideas on how I can branch that off into something else, and it's gonna be amazing. I know it. I just know I'm gonna come up with something really, really good out of this one, and so I'm so happy that we found out how to make that.
Yeah. That was pretty.
That's the star of what I have done for this, but it's amazing. We absolutely love this. It is delicious, and we could probably just keep eating this and the rest of it, and we would be perfectly happy with that.
Yeah. So I am curious to ask the audience out there, are there any like dishes that your family used to make that you really want to try to recreate? Like a dish that you would have at the holidays and that kind of stuff? Are there any ones that you've been trying to recreate, or maybe that you have recreated and made whole food plant-based? I'm just curious to see what kinds of things you guys have come up with.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. So let us know in the comments below.
You know, it's just going to be like a million requests, like, here's my recipe, Brian, please remake it for me. Which we actually do like when people send us, like, there have been some people who've sent us recipes that they've made before, and it's definitely, you know, we obviously don't have time to make all of them, but we have like a running list of things. So when we run out of ideas and stuff like that, we always have you guys are so good at giving us ideas, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. But if you got a recipe and you want to share it with us, you can share so in the comments below. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. We are getting really close to that 10,000 mark on Instagram. So please go and follow us on there and see all of the lovely stories and photos that Jessica puts up. And I will watch them because it's like, hey, Crocs in the Kitchen posted a new story. I'm like, ooh, what's going on in my life right now, apparently. Also, if you have not subscribed, please do so. Just subscribe. It's nice. And then you get to click that bell that's right next to it, and you get all the notifications for whenever we post a new video. And then you get to be one of the first people to watch it, you know, and give a comment on, you know, your favorite family recipe that you've converted or want to convert. But I think that's all I got.
That's all I got.
We will see you next time on Crocs in the Kitchen. Bye.